Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're sort of pushing past the usual folklore, the storybook versions. We're zooming in on figures like fairies, elementals, and ancestral spirits, but really looking at them as, well, practical forces in modern magic, not just stories.
Exactly. Tangible forces, things that practitioners actually interact with.
Right. And the sources we've gathered for you really treat them that way, as dynamic beings that can guide, help, or sometimes really challenge people involved in witchcraft or spirit work. So our mission here is pretty straightforward, give you a kind of fast-track understanding. We'll cover their roles, their cultural roots, and crucially, the guidelines for engaging safely.
And that framework, those guidelines, they're really non-negotiable based on everything we read.
Ah.
The sources consistently emphasize that working with these entities isn't casual. It demands serious respect, caution, and a real understanding of where they fit tradition-wise. It's not about just, sending out an open invitation. It's structured relationship management, carefully done.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting with maybe the most misunderstood group, the Fae. Our sources introduce fairies, or the Fae, as these really enduring figures, mainly from Celtic and European traditions, but we're definitely not talking about tiny Tinkerbell types here.
Absolutely not, no. Historically, the sources paint them as, well, powerful nature spirits, sometimes quite formidable. Some views even see them as remnants of older gods, beings who held sway over the land long before current human beliefs took hold. They're described as wild, amoral by our standards, and just deeply woven into the natural world itself.
That distinction, powerful, amoral, that's really key, isn't it? It takes them way beyond simple fairy tales. But okay, practically speaking, what roles do they actually play in modern witchcraft according to these texts?
Well, the sources generally outline three main functions. First, they're often seen as the guardians of nature, unquestionably. Their power is deeply connected to the integrity of wild places. Witches tend to interact with them in what are called liminal spaces.
Liminal spaces. Can you elaborate on that a bit for anyone unfamiliar with the term?
Sure. A liminal space is basically an in-between zone. Think thresholds, doorways, shorelines where land meets water, twilight hours like dusk or dawn, or, a sacred grove where the cultivated world sort of fades into the wild. Honoring the Fae there, the sources say, is specifically about maintaining harmony with the land, acknowledging their prior claim, their stewardship.
Ah, okay. So it's almost like a spiritual diplomacy with the land itself, driven by respect. But you mentioned caution earlier. If they can be dangerous, why engage? This brings us to their second role you mentioned, tricksters and teachers. Is the wisdom worth the risk?
That really is the central challenge with the Fae, according to these texts. It's presented as very high risk, high reward. Folklore is just packed with warnings, things like never give your true name, be wary of certain gifts, maintain absolute formality. But if that respect is genuine and the interaction is handled correctly, the sources suggest they can offer incredible gifts, profound wisdom, maybe magical assistance, bursts of creative inspiration.
That makes sense. So it's less about asking a favor and more like entering into a formal, maybe even a diplomatic exchange.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah.
And that leads right into their third role.
Yeah.
They can function as powerful magical allies. Practitioners might invoke them specifically for spell work related to things like fertility or abundance,
Yeah.
or maybe when they need help aligning with the big seasonal shifts.
And modern practice reflects this careful approach. The sources mention witches creating dedicated fairy altars, leaving specific offerings.
Yes, very specific.
Yeah.
And traditional. We're not talking about plastic beads here. Think high-quality offerings. Fresh milk, cream, maybe unsalted butter, sometimes finely baked bread, and significantly never salt. Salt is often said to repel them. The details really matter.
Details matter. Got it.
And speaking of deep-rooted relationships and value, let's shift to another category of spirits, one that spans pretty much all cultures and time, the spirits of the dead. This practice is almost universal, and the focus is usually quite clear, honoring them as protectors, guides, and teachers, not just, spooky ghosts.
Right, ancestor.
Ancestors, yes. They are absolutely central in so many traditions, from various African diaspora religions right through to European folk practices. They're seen as providing vital wisdom, reliable protection, and a sense of continuity. They connect the past to the present directly.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Beyond just family connection, the sources talk about their magical function as mediators between worlds. They aren't just relatives who've passed on, they're described as actual bridges.
Exactly. They occupy this unique position, having lived in the physical world and then crossed over into the spiritual. So they understand both sides, essentially, the language of the living, the dynamics of the spirit realm. This allows practitioners potentially to access deeper knowledge, spiritual insights that might be otherwise unreachable.
How does that communication actually happen according to the sources? It's not always like a movie seance, right?
Oh, rarely. Often it's much more subtle. It might come through as strong intuition, gut feelings, maybe unexpected solutions popping into your head,
Hmm.
or guidance in dreams, synchronicities that seem to confirm you're on the right path. And because they are often family, there's an inherent layer of protection. They theoretically have a vested interest in your well-being.
That inherent safety net. That must be why the guidelines we'll discuss later often stress ancestry first as the safest way in. It's grounded in that lineage.
Precisely.
And the modern practices seem quite common. The use of ancestor altars, for example.
Very common, yes. Often simple, dedicated spaces. Maybe with candles, photos, personal items. Offerings are typical too, things the person enjoyed in life, like a specific drink or food. And then you have the big annual events like Samhain or similar Days of the Dead traditions globally. These act as designated times to consciously thin the veil, so to speak, and foster that connection.
Okay, let's bring our focus back to the natural world for a moment, to nature spirits and elementals. The sources really link these beings to the fundamental forces earth, air, fire, water. Working with them seems to symbolize trying to achieve harmony with natural cycles.
Absolutely. They're like the building blocks of the physical world. Engaging with them helps ground magical work in tangible reality. We can quickly touch on the classic four elementals. For Earth, you traditionally have gnomes, seen as guardians of minerals, plants, the soil itself. You might invoke them for stability, grounding, manifestation.
Okay, and moving up. For air.
For air, you have the sylphs. They represent the invisible forces, wind, breath, even the speed of thought, associated with clarity, communication, inspiration.
Then the intense one. Fire.
Fire, yes, represented by salamanders. Spirits of flame linked to transformation, often rapid, dramatic change, also energy, cleansing, protection.
And finally, water.
Water, governed by undines. Beings associated with rivers, oceans, wells. And, importantly, the fluid world of emotions, often invoked for healing, intuition, psychic awareness.
And their role in ritual. It's about balance, right?
It's all about dynamic equilibrium. The sources explain that representing elementals in a ritual circle isn't just symbolic acknowledgement. It's meant to actively balance these fundamental forces within the sacred space itself.
That sounds like calling the quarters.
That's exactly where the formal practice of calling the quarters comes from.
Yeah.
For anyone listening, this typically involves formally invoking the spirits or energies associated with the four cardinal directions, each linked to an element. Usually north for earth, east for air, south for fire, and west for water. It's a deliberate act to create a balanced, protected space for working magic.
Now, it's really important, isn't it, to stress that this kind of interaction with unseen forces isn't just a European thing. The sources give great examples from all over the world.
Oh, absolutely. It's a universal human experience, it seems. And what's fascinating is seeing the diversity alongside these recurring structural patterns. Take the jinn from Middle Eastern traditions, for example. Powerful beings often described as made from smokeless fire. They share that dual nature we saw with the Fae. They can be incredible allies, especially if bound by agreements, but also potentially chaotic, dangerous tricksters.
That parallel is striking. Tied to raw elements, potentially dangerous, operating outside human morality.
Exactly. Then you look at spirits like the Loa in Haitian Vodou. These are very distinct entities, each with specific personalities, domains, and precise rituals required to honor them. They act as crucial intermediaries between humans and the divine.
And we see similar structures elsewhere.
Everywhere. In Japan's Shinto tradition, you have the kami. These can be spirits of nature, ancestors, even powerful natural phenomena, honored through shrines, offerings, often to maintain local harmony. Or think about totemic spirits found in many indigenous cultures, animal spirits or guardians connected to specific clans or individuals, offering protection and guidance linked to the animal's nature. The constant thread, really, is that engaging with any of these powerful forces requires structure and respect. The transaction, if you want to call it that, must be carefully managed.
Okay.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is why the sources dedicate so much attention to guidelines. Because the risks are presented as real, regardless of the specific cultural tradition. The warning is consistent. Not all spirits are benevolent. And just as importantly, trying to borrow or, frankly, appropriate practices without genuine understanding, initiation, or lineage is seen as not just disrespectful, but potentially ineffective or even dangerous.
That emphasis on structure, respect, and safety is paramount then. Let's summarize those key guidelines the sources lay out for anyone considering this kind of work. Number 1 seems straightforward. Respect. Approach with humility, offer thanks, appropriate gifts, perform the correct rituals. Always acknowledge the entity's power and its domain.
Hmm. Essential.
Second, and this seems critical for safety, boundaries. This isn't just good advice, it's described as essential magical hygiene. You need to establish protection first, grounding, shielding, maybe wards, before you even think about inviting contact. Don't open the door wide and then scramble for protection.
Absolutely crucial. Proactive, not reactive. And that leads back to what we touched on, the safest starting point, Guideline 3. Ancestry first. The sources really hammer this home. Starting spirit work with your own direct lineage is often the most grounded and inherently protected entry point. The thinking is that familial bond provides kind of natural filter. Your ancestors, generally speaking, have your best interests at heart, offering a buffer against truly negative influences.
That makes intuitive sense.
Yeah.
And the final guideline.
Cultural awareness. This is huge. It basically means
You-
don't just grab practices from traditions that might be closed or require specific initiation, especially if you have no connection or understanding. It's about recognizing boundaries, respecting the integrity of different spiritual paths, and not treating sacred practices like a pick and mix counter. Okay, so respect, boundaries, starting with ancestry and cultural awareness. That framework seems clear.
And it loops us back neatly to where we started, really. The core idea running through all these sources is that these beings, elementals, fae, jinn, ancestors, they aren't just fantasy figures. They function as real allies, protectors, sometimes challenging teachers who can guide practitioners toward a deeper, more holistic understanding of both the natural and the spiritual worlds.
So what does this all mean? I think it means that magic, viewed this way, isn't just about willpower or casting spells in isolation. It's fundamentally about building and maintaining respectful relationships. It's about balance, connection, acknowledging forces potentially greater than ourselves. It reminds us magic involves interacting with worlds beyond the everyday.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from purely solitary practice centered on personal desire toward something more collaborative, more structured,
Right.
relationship-based.
Right. And given how strongly the sources emphasize ancestry first as that foundational, safe starting point, we wanted to leave you, the listener, with a thought to mull over. Think about this. What tangible, maybe even non-magical ways could you begin honoring your own personal or cultural history this week? Could it be looking into genealogy, learning an old family recipe, visiting a place tied to your heritage? How might doing that simple act of honoring your past naturally start building your own foundation for understanding these worlds beyond your own? Something to consider. Thank you for diving deep with us today.